You ever have one of those nights where everything feels just a little too calm, almost like the world is holding its breath, and you can't help but feel something's about to snap? That was the start of it for meth night. I learned exactly what kind of nurse I was and what kind of world we live in. My name's Lana Cross, and I was only 22 when the call came anew to the trauma unit, green in a way the veterans like to joke about, but my hands already knew the shape of crisis. I swear, sometimes you just know something is coming. We'd had a string of routine patients, nothing that set the blood racing, just enough to lull you. Then the code came over the radio critical trauma. Unidentified male, ETA 4 minutes. The whole floor snapped to life. But when that blacked-out government SUV screamed into the ambulance, bay no medics, no gurney, just two officers half-dragging a man who looked more dead than alive, blood pooling on the linoleum, I realized routine was gone for good. "He's our asset," one officer barked. "He lives, or you answer to Washington." 40 bullet wounds, 40. And not a surgeon in sight. The only one on call was stuck across town. I remember everyone looking at each other, nobody willing to move, fear or indecision. Who knows? All I knew was if we waited, he was gone. So I said it's HARP, louder than I meant prep for field surgery now. My charge nurse started to protest, but I shut her down. I didn't have permission, but I had hands and a heartbeat, and that was all the universe was offering that night. You know what I mean? I worked fast cutting through bloody Kevlar, calling for suction, clamps, irrigation, moving from wound to wound, sweat running down my back as I tried to keep his pulse from flatlining. He coded once, I shocked him twice. He came back. 3 bullets out, then 5, then 12. The whole team started moving with me, not against me like we were dancing on a knife's edge. 20 bullets in, the commander in the corner stopped frowning and started praying, I think. By the time I got to the last 5 deep in the gut, the hardest place, I was running on fumes and adrenaline, but I kept going. 40 bullets on a metal tray, a living man still breathing on my table, and I finally let myself believe I'd done the impossible. It wasn't textbook. It wasn't by the rules, but it was the right thing, and I knew in my bones, even as I walked out of the ER, covered in blood, hands shaking, the kind of tired that goes straight to your soul. You don't forget a night like that. But what I didn't know Cold have guessed was that somewhere, while my team was wiping tears and I was peeling off bloody gloves, a chain reaction had started that would turn my whole world upside down. By morning, word had spread, but not the way you'd think. No high fives, no respect, just tight lips and eyes sliding away as I walked the halls. I got called to administration cold room, 2 security guards, the HR woman who only ever shows up for firings, and DR. Beckman, arms folded. They laid it out. Unauthorized procedure, breach of protocol, operating without an attending. We have to terminate your employment effective immediately. My ears rang. I saved a man's life, I said, barely believing it. Beckman just shook his head. You did what you believed was right, but you put the hospital at risk. We're a civilian facility, Lana. Not one word about courage, just risk. I unclipped my badge, 3 years, 1,000 hours, countless lives, and placed it on the table. You ever felt your heart get cold in an instant? Yeah, that happened. I walked out of that hospital like a criminal escorted by guards, watched by people I'd trained, healed, laughed with. Not a word, just a heavy silence. And me alone in the parking lot, bloodstained scrubs and all. I got a couple of texts, "We're proud of you, you don't deserve this," but mostly it was silence. Silence at work, silence from friends, silence in my apartment. It's a lonely thing, being right when the world wants you to be wrong. For days passed. My badge sat on the table, mocking me, my phone cold, my mind replaying that night on loop. 40 bullets, the sound of clamps, that fluttering pulse under my fingers. I started to wonder if I had been reckless, if maybe I was the villain after all. Doubt is a slow poison, you know? But every time I considered it, I remembered the look on that man's face as he came back to life. That mattered. Then the world shifted again. Early morning, just after sunrise, I heard the rumble, deep, unnatural. Helicopter blades, not thunder. 2 black military helicopters descended, shaking my apartment windows, landing right outside. I stepped onto my porch, breath stuck somewhere in my chest as my neighbors filmed and gawked. The doors opened, and out stepped a Navy commander, silver eagles on his collar, and he walked straight to me, pulled a sealed envelope from his pocket, and saluted. "You saved one of ours, and we don't forget." The envelope held an official letter, a check for $100,000, and in a velvet box, the Medal for Civilian Valor, something less than 50 people have ever received. My hand shook so bad I thought I'd drop it. "Why me?" I asked. He looked at me, I looked at me, and said, "Because you did what no one else could, and you did it for the right reasons." The applause that broke out from my neighbor's honest, raw, grateful meant more than any hospital board ever could. And the world noticed. A neighbor's phone clip of the helicopters went viral, and soon news crews, reporters, podcasts, and social media all wanted a piece of my story. I wasn't ready. I'd lost so much. I didn't want fame, just peace. But the Navy insisted on a ceremony, and 2 days later, I stood on a stage under bright lights, surrounded by people who saw not a liability, but a hero. They called my name, handed me a medal, and for the first time in days, I felt steady again. I told them the truth. I didn't do it to be brave or to be special, just because someone had to. Maybe I lost a lot because of that choice me job, my peace, but if I had to do it again, I would. Every time, the crowd stood and cheered, tears in their eyes, and I realized then that sometimes the world does catch up with the truth eventually. Offers rolled in, job after job, director of emergency ethics, national hospital chains, think tanks. I didn't say yes right away. I needed to find my footing, to remember who I was. When I did return to hospital life, it wasn't in Houston, but at Ridgehaven Medical up in Denver, where the air was cold and the welcome was warm. My new office had my name on the door, chief of emergency response, and the staff greeted me with pride, not suspicion. I walked the floor, checked on patients, and found, slowly, that purpose comes back if you let it. A few months later, I visited the Navy base, the man I'd saved now sitting up in bed, smiling, alive, strong, scarred but grateful. No cameras, no reporters, just the two of us talking about life, about what happens when you follow your instincts and refuse to wait for permission. He said, "I owe you more than my life," and I told him, "You gave me a reason to remember why I do this." Before I left, a young nurse stopped me, yes wide, clutching a notepad. "You're the reason I went into nursing," she blurted out. I squeezed her shoulder. "Promise me you'll never wait for permission to do what's right." She nodded, holding the promise like gold. As the sun set behind those helicopters now, just a distant thrum in the sky, I knew I hadn't just survived. I'd changed. Not just myself, but the people who watched, who stood up, who now believed. Maybe the world's still full of red tape, rules, and fear, but if you've got the guts to act when it counts, you can rewrite what justice looks like one impossible night at a time. So let me ask you, if you were in my shoes, would you have risked everything for a stranger? Was justice really served? Or does the system still need to change? Drop your thoughts below, rate this story, and tell us where you're watching from. I want to know what you believe makes a hero, and whether you think the world needs more people who act or more people who obey. Your voice matters.